I have never been one for New Year's resolutions. Not that I have anything inherently against them, but I've never really had that much that I would want to accomplish with one, that I couldn't otherwise tackle at other points of the year. However, a few weeks ago, I had an idea for a year-long project that actually grabbed my attention enough for me to actually commit to it. In 2024, I want to play an arcade game every day, journaling my thoughts and experiences along the way. There are a variety of factors in my life that have driven me to this idea, the first of which is my curiosity as a game designer. Not only do I write about games, but I also design some of my own. One of the things I love in games is elegance. I continually find myself impressed by games that are able to extract immense mechanical depth from only a few simple rules, and this is something I like to incorporate into my own games, to varying degrees of success. There are a lot of places that one could study elegance, but I feel like arcade games can offer a lot of insight here. Obviously, not every arcade game is going to be a bastion of elegance, but if you look at many of the most iconic and widespread arcade titles, they're often built atop simple ideas that remain engaging for all kinds of players. These games benefited when new players could figure out how they worked, but they also benefited from being deep enough that players would want to revisit the games in the future to hone their mastery. Considering the design constraints that arcade games were made to serve, there's probably a lot to be learned from a year-long study of the arcade. Secondly, I was also drawn to this project by my interest in game history. There's so much interesting history packed into the arcades, from strange experiments to foundational titles that had massive influence both in the arcades and elsewhere in gaming. It seems that no matter which proverbial arcade rock I look under, there will always be some juicy history bugs to discover, and this project is a great excuse to look into that. Thirdly, I love obscure games. I derive a lot of pleasure from jumping into weird, lesser-known games that nonetheless are compelling, or at the very least, interesting. With a history spanning decades, you can bet that there are some obscure arcade oddities to look into. As I mentioned, in addition to playing these games, I will also be taking notes and writing about my experiences. Not that I am promising lengthy essays for each game I play, but I hope that writing about my experiences will force me to better articulate my thoughts on each title, and help me become more astute and observant as a critic. I am also imposing a few rules on this project. Firstly, I will only play a game if I have a decent way of recreating its control scheme. Arcade games with joysticks and buttons translate to controllers and keyboards pretty well, but the same cannot be said for light gun games. Sure, I could use my mouse to play a light gun game, but there is a vast experiential gap between holding a light gun and clicking on things with a mouse. And out of fairness for these light gun games, I would only want to critically engage with them if I can experience something similar to their intended controls. This also applies to trackball games, though to a lesser extent, and it's possible that I could come up with a way of somewhat getting the trackball experience. Additionally, I will only be playing games that have some sort of scoring element. Part of why I want to do this project is that score-based games are incredibly cool, and I'd love to learn more about what makes for a compelling score-based experience. I also would like to keep track of some statistics throughout this project, such as my high scores, my initial scores, and some other things. This rule mainly affects fighting and racing games, which don't always have scoring systems. These games are certainly important parts of the arcade, but fall a little bit outside of my scope for this project. Outside of these rules, and a few other stipulations, anything from the vast and truly expansive history of arcades is on the table. And if you have any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. If you want to follow the Arcade a Day project, I have a website set up to host my daily writing, and if you'd like to follow along, a link will be in the description. At the end of the year, I'd like to do some retrospecting in a more essay-esque way, where I break down my thoughts and feelings about the various games I played, what I learned, and some of my takeaways. However, until then, have a good day.